Yes, I know, the review of the Xiaomi MiPad 3 by now is kinda too late, because everyone who wanted to review it already did it a long time ago. But I actually wasn't all that much in a rush, because what I've seen on first reviews is that people are complaining about all sorts of bugs and performance issues, and that's why I thought, if I can't get my hands on it early on anyways, let's just wait a little bit, let it mature, and then see how good it is now in its kind of final state. And that's exactly what I'm going to do today, starting off with the design and build quality, which is one thing that I like a lot, because as you can see, it's super thin, also very lightweight, and built also very high quality, because nothing really flexes, everything feels very sturdy with a little bit of an edge here to maybe protect the screen. And we get some nice audible and also tactile feedback of those buttons, which are placed quite good in my opinion. We will see here the headphone jack, nothing on this side, and here on the bottom the USB Type-C port, and to one side I would say, because that is what you will use it in video mode anyways for, stereo speakers on the back, which I don't see are proper stereo speakers, because this is what you will hold it like for videos, which actually brings me to the next thing, the form factor. I like that one actually a lot coming from an iPad, because 4x3 is great for landscape use, but also portrait mode. But of course that comes with one trade-off, which is the video size, because as you can see here, if I quickly switch to that, you will see that you get quite a lot of bars on the bottom top, and that's why the screen isn't all that big anymore, because this is 7.9 with 4x3, and this is the more traditional 16:10 with 8 inches. So you see, you get after all noticeably a bigger video size. As you can see, the device aren't all that different apart. Of course, one is a little bit longer, therefore the one is a little bit wider, but that's just something to keep in mind. I like it a lot, but it's maybe not quite for everyone. But already talking about that aspect ratio, let's get to the display here, because we have a resolution of 2480 by 1536, which leads to a very bright display, but also one by default being just way too warm. So I had to use automatic contrast, which allows me to color temperature control, and I had to set it all the way to cool to make it actually okay for me, because increased I just think is a little bit too warm without any options, and standard is of course there. But to the actual qualities of display, I have to say that makes up for quite a lot, especially in videos, because the display maybe not super bright with about 420 lux, which is still good enough, especially indoors. The screen though has one tendency to just seem a little bit dull, which is why I use the higher brightness, in this case 75%, which then is quite bright, but that kind of tries to get away with the fact that I found it was a little bit dull, but not all that much, because this is mostly a thing that we will see in pictures, also in videos. But display calibration I like, because the white is okay, like I said, once set properly, halfway decent. The black is also good, no backlight bleed, and the colors are very nice, a little bit saturated, definitely still accurate though. And it was especially the very sharp experience for videos that makes this display still very good without any issues, because especially YouTube videos look really, really nice. But if you're talking about YouTube, how do they sound? Of course, stereo backfiring speakers on one side in landscape mode are not the ideal solution. Something on the front would have been way better, or maybe even to the sides. But I still have to say, if you kinda get it to reflect, or maybe have them closer to a wall or so, the sound is still absolutely good, because maximum volume was at all times, I would say, totally acceptable, totally fine. I didn't really need it more. More would have been, of course, nice, but the tonal balance is still okay. It didn't sound particularly very warm, but also never cold. So it gets the job done good after all. Now, the headphone jack though, that is actually better. That is really good, because it's quite loud, good quality, and known from Xiaomi, we also get once again presets for different headphones of their own, and also equalizers. So that could also maybe already make up for the not that great speaker for a lot of people. Now let's get into the performance here. Let's end all the apps, and as always check how quickly they launch. And I would definitely say this is a quite snappy device. For a tablet, this is fine. One thing that I've noticed though, if I jump between too many apps for a longer period of time, and maybe the system clutters up a bit, then it's slightly tended to get a little bit sluggish. It's not a huge issue or something like that, but still just something to be mentioned. Otherwise, the browsing performance, I would say, is a little bit, at least sometimes, behind what you get in terms of apps, because as you can see, this is still lightweight and fluid, but some pages look a little bit weird. And I noticed that if I use my default browser, which is Naked Browser, things tended to feel a little bit more rounded, a little bit more polished. But this is still very good without any issues. But what is great is the app performance, because as you can see here, Super smooth, pretty much lag free at all times, unless it maybe slides or gets janky. But as you can see, super responsive. You can jump between all apps quite nicely. So definitely the app experience is super nice, as you can see here, top. And one thing that I did not expect is actually Google Plus to run in 3 columns. So nice. This is actually really good. Of course, the multitasking performance maybe is a little bit slowed down because of this quite long animation. So I really wish and I hope in MIUI 9 this will get changed, because then it could improve, because this does not feel all that polished. But getting to the gaming performance, I have to say that one is a little bit definitely more behind than the rest, because you can play games, for example, like Riptide, which have a more like adaptive game setting, and those still look nice and are nicely playable. But once we, for example, switch to games like Asphalt Extreme, which by default starts with MDPI and therefore looks quite ugly and it doesn't really allow to change any particular settings on its own, it looked quite bad, but it was playable. Now, once I switched to HDPI, which still didn't give me the option to change any settings, it looked the way it should have out of the box, but you can see that it's just noticeably less smooth. We have some little bit more stutter. It's still playable, but definitely not in the best way. Now, Modern Combat, though, once again shows this quite good. It can't handle it. You can play it once again, but you won't get the best experience. So if you think you have some kind of a small portable console here, no, you would have to look for something else, like maybe an Nvidia Shield tablet. But getting back to the battery life now, which brings me to the point that the full charge takes about 3 hours and 15, which I would say for this tablet is still quite okay. No problems here. 11% for an hour of YouTube is still also good, which kind of shows already what you can expect, because I'm not blown away by the battery life, but I would say it's quite good after all, because I got about on one day with quite high brightness though, 75%, I got, 8 hours of screen time over the course of 2 days, 7, and over the course of 3, 6 hours. So you can take off about 1 hour of screen on time per day of standby drain, which is actually still quite good, because I've seen way worse, so it could be even better, but this is in line what I would have expected, and for a tablet of this size and especially of this lightweightness, this is still absolutely fine. Now, let's get to the software. And I definitely have to show off first what I'm actually running, because this is it, as you can see here, Android 7.0 with the MIUI Global 8.2 stable 82800. And this is the way I got it about 3 or 4 weeks ago from GearBest. So I'm not quite sure, because I don't really get any updates. Maybe I would have to switch to the global ROM or something like that to get to those, but I didn't. Getting back to what for other things, and this is something that you will have to actually keep in mind, since we have so thin bezels. Now I'm already touching the screen and I can't use it, so just be aware of that. Also, though, we don't have an app drawer, not an issue for me. You could just use a third-party launcher or anything like that. Of course, quick settings are customizable, but one thing that I like a lot is that we have a theming engine, and an actually quite good one. Now, in terms of features, for example, we have the quick ball. That kind of replaces the buttons if you want to, but we have way more options, and this is definitely a quite feature-packed system, because we get the quick ball, as I said, screenshot options, we get a notification light, which is actually not something all that common, headphone options, as I said already, with some equalizing and so on. Buttons, you can set long press navigation buttons options, turn off the button keys and so on, even though I noticed that I have some misfiring of these buttons just not being accepted, but at least in normal use they weren't really ever in the way, so that was fine compared to maybe something like a Samsung tablet. Of course, we get also extra options like show connection speed and way more. So a lot of minor things, but I have to get to one thing. Not just the thing that I maybe won't get updates like I have it right now. Maybe I would have to get some customers, but the way more important part for me is MIUI 9 that will come out in a few days, and on the list of eligible devices, for some reason I didn't see the MiPad 3. I saw the MiPad and I saw the MiPad 2. I really hope it's an error that the 3 isn't listed, because it would be quite a bummer, because it would be quite nice to have some kind of multi-screen options and so on, and this device being so new definitely would have deserved it. From Trading Shenzhen, for example, I heard that they usually give a week of support out to their tablets, which would be definitely quite off to see, because it's their only tablet, so why not properly support it? So that is a little bit questionable after all, but I also use tablets a little bit less various, a little bit different than I do with phones, so I would still be okay with the software as it is right now. And that's why I would say let's get to the pros and cons. And here I have to mention the great design and the build quality. It's super lightweight and very portable. I like that. The display is still very good because very sharp, and especially videos look super nice, but it is also a little bit dull, and the calibration was too warm, but that's still fine mostly because we get also good speakers, a really good headphone jack, and after all a very good performance overall. For games I would say not that strong. For apps I would say great though, and the browsing performance is still I would say about very good, and that along with quite good battery life. Now what's not that great? Default calibration being too warm, that's what I already mentioned. The backfiring speakers, they are fine though. Browsing performance is slightly weaker than the app performance. Gaming performance definitely could be better. Future updates are questionable, and it usually has to be imported. And that already brings me to my conclusion. Because priced at around $200, $220, sometimes even less on flash sales, for example on GearBest, I would still definitely easily recommend this because first of all, the competition these days is just not very strong, and this one doesn't really do much wrong because first of all, for this price usually you have to make quite a few compromises. Either it's the display, the performance, battery life, or most times the build quality, which is not the case here because the build quality is super nice. The display, especially if you set it a little bit brighter, also very pleasant and especially great for videos, even though with the bars, maybe not for everyone who wants to consume media all the time, then the screen could just feel a little bit smaller, and something like a 16:10 tablet would be preferred. But the speaker is still totally fine, and if I watch longer, use a Bluetooth speaker. Anyways, performance is on a very good level, so I guess this with time improved from what I've seen on people complaining about in the early days. Battery life is still totally fine. Could be better, yeah, always could be. And the software does the job just fine. So in the end, like I said, I can still recommend it. And not just because of the pretty much non-existent alternatives, but just because for the price it offers a good value. The weaknesses are, I would say, mostly acceptable. You can get away with them. And then you get a nice package. And that's, yeah, all I can say. If you have anything further to say, let that down in the comments. Also maybe a thumbs up and a subscription. But otherwise, I wish you a nice day. Until next time. Bye.